Hi, Pocket. In this video, I tell the tale of how my alignment changed from lawful to chaotic, and who you can thank for it. Weekly bounty time. This week, we're looking for tempered bird wyverns in the cliffs. There are two bird wyverns in wilds right now, Yian Kutku and Gypseros, and both of them spawn in the cliffs. After looking at my map, my ice shard cliffs had a tempered Gypseros upsurge or something. How convenient. If you've watched the recent 50 hunts videos, you know I got a lot of bow hunts in my future, so I wanted to get some practice in before diving into the deep end. Hunting these tempered Gypseros were my first hunts using the bow, and I spent very little time in the training room, so I apologize for any sloppiness. The path of learning is rife with stumbling students. On to the tale. When I was in elementary school, there were no two shoes more goody than mine. Though my height and weight were dangerously lacking, my pride was in abundance. My older siblings, all praised intellectuals, revered by their professors, peers, and parents, had set a high standard, and I wished to follow it. The moment I got home from school, I did my homework immediately. I would say to my mother, I didn't get in trouble today, a reminder of my spotless record. By my perception, blind as any child of that age is, I was well liked. People laughed when I made funny faces or drew doodles in the corners of the whiteboard. I had plenty of friends, and my teachers appreciated a sensitive boy, finding my traits to be something less common and admirable. Pocket, he's a smart boy, sharp as a tack, they'd say, about a boy currently knee-deep in the sharpener as the machine churns. I had one friend I'd consider my greatest friend, we'll call Lenny. Not my best friend, because I was very picky with that title. Lenny was funny too. The funniest, I thought, and we always played together on the playground. Running about with Lenny, I began to notice my own boundaries, the places my feet would not tread. But Lenny didn't mind. Lenny ran on the pavement, even on the hottest days, when the teacher told us to stay away. Lenny scraped his elbows on the mulch because he jumped off the slide. Lenny almost fell out of his chair in the middle of class. Lenny went to the bathroom without asking Miss Carroll. There was a time I was waiting in line to ask Miss Carroll to go to the bathroom, Lenny right in front of me. We were talking, but he could tell I really had to go. You should just go, it's not that big a deal, he told me. She wouldn't even notice if you're fast. Everybody just goes, you're the only one who still asks. I scoffed. She said on the first day we had to ask, so I ask. Alas, the line to her desk was too long. Struggling, squirming, shifting my weight left and right, and after about 10 minutes, I realized all of a sudden that I didn't have to hold it anymore. Someone pointed, a chuckle from across the room. Then, I heard Lenny say something loudly. Wow, Pocket, you really have to go. You're sweating like crazy. He said it loud enough that everyone in the room heard. Miss Carroll, can Pocket go to the bathroom? He's gotta go real bad. Miss Carroll glanced up and waved for me to go ahead. When I was in the bathroom, I managed to clean myself and my clothes off as much as I could, and I came back out. Though I doubt it really fooled anyone, Lenny had looked out for me. He was a good friend, a good person. I wonder where he is nowadays. Each time he did those other things, like running on the pavement, jumping on the playground, it made the boundary between us clearer. No moment was that boundary more clear than the day Lenny came in 5 minutes late from recess, and Miss Carroll told him to pull a stick. Pulling a stick was perhaps the most heinous punishment I could imagine. I did not like stick pullers, and I never pulled one myself. Never will either, I'd say. There were a tray of slots at the front of the room, each with a student's name on it, and a row of popsicle sticks. Everyone began with the green stick at the front, but after pulling your green stick, the yellow stick would show. Then, if you were really bad, after pulling the yellow stick, the red stick would show, and if you pulled the red stick, you got sent home. Thankfully, Even for who I deemed the worst students, red stick pulls were a very rare occasion. But even a green stick pull was pretty bad in my eyes. At least half the students had rarely, if ever, seen the yellow stick hanging out of their slot. In my mind, I labeled those as the good kids, and everyone else was a bad kid, or trouble. Lenny hadn't pulled a stick, to my knowledge, prior to that point, and though I really didn't care that he had spent an extra 5 minutes out at recess, his offense alone meant nothing to me. The act of pulling the stick had changed the way I saw him. During our assignments, I silently pondered his morality. Could I be friends with a stick puller? Was he a bad influence? Silly questions, but they were important to me at the time. After all, there was no offense greater than that. A stick puller was only destined for bad things in my eyes. A life of crime, perhaps. Everyone who ends up in prison is probably a stick puller, I could have said with confidence. There's not a single witch or wizard who went bad that wasn't a stick puller. I looked over across the room toward Lenny's yellow stick, and had to ask myself the question. Am I willing to be friends with someone like that? I did my best not to treat Lenny differently, and eventually I managed to let it go. But that occurrence had posed a question to me. The first thing to challenge what I thought was my resolute perception of right and wrong. There were other things that Lenny did that weren't good. He liked to do his homework first thing in the morning before class. I told him it's homework, not classwork, but he would just laugh and do it anyways. When class started, he'd turn it in and get the same credit as me. And if he didn't get caught, if he didn't pull a stick, I discovered that I really didn't mind. It was safer to do at home, I thought, less risk, but if he could do it that way, it didn't really make a difference. As long as he didn't pull a stick, I cared about that a lot. One day, I arrived home, set my bag down and opened it, only to find my workbook missing. I'd left it in my desk. I knew exactly where it was, and I needed to complete a page of it, but it was still at school. My entire routine was thrown off. I called my parents crying, both of them still at work. They agreed that the first one home would drive me to school to go get it. I waited by the window for hours until they arrived, but by the time we got to school, everything was locked up. Even the janitor couldn't get us in, no matter my begging. It was the first night in my life that I didn't sleep at all. I finished my other schoolwork and sat in my bed, waiting for the next day. I thought about excuses. Maybe I would skip school, but my mother knew about my fear, and she gave me a pep talk. Don't worry about it. It's just a missed assignment. You'll be okay. I nodded to her and went off to class. When I sat at my desk and reached inside, I felt that elusive workbook. The one that had dodged my bag and put me in that troublesome situation to begin with. I took it out of my desk and glared at it as Lenny entered the classroom. "What's up? Why do you look so pale?" he asked, taking a seat nearby. "I forgot my workbook," I said, like a sinner. "I wasn't able to do it last night because I forgot it in my desk." "Oh, okay." He didn't seem to care. I watched Lenny pull out his own workbook from his own desk, not from his bag, and start working on it. "You can copy mine if you want. I'm just gonna get it done real quick." A decision. A choice. Alignment. The world's compasses spun in my head as I decided which path I would take, which pocket I would become. I glanced between Miss Carroll, my popsicle sticks, Lenny, and my workbook. It felt like there was no right answer. The only right answer was not forgetting my workbook in the first place. What would Batman do? I asked myself. I genuinely, vividly remember asking myself that exact question. And though I barely knew Batman, it hardened my resolve. I took my workbook, held it close to my chest, and marched myself across the room, right up to Miss Carroll's desk, the altar of truth and reason, and its keeper, my teacher. "Miss Carroll," I said. She was busy, so I gave her a moment. "Yes, what is it, Pocket?" she asked. "Last night, I forgot my workbook, but I got my parents to drive me here, and it was..." Without sleep, I stumbled through my words, but Miss Carroll understood what I was saying. "I'm sorry, Pocket. It's okay," she said, taking my workbook and flipping it to the assigned page, blank. I'm sorry, but you know the punishment for not doing your homework. My blood ran cold, her words harshly reverberating between my ears, rattling my brain. Not doing your homework. She pursed her lips and pointed across the room to the tray. I walked in front of an audience the size of the world. I walked across the universe's stage toward my slot and reached out to take my first green stick. I stood there to stare at it for a moment, waiting to wake up. A yellow stick, my name just below it. I was a stick puller. She really made you do it, huh? Lenny patted me on the back. I stared at my workbook, slumped at my desk, the exhaustion of having stayed up all night striking me with the sobering reality of my unbearable guilt. How quickly my castle of pride had crumbled. I looked up from my desk at Miss Carroll, then at my workbook. Though I had thought that that previous moment, picking up my workbook and leaving my desk to confess my crimes, was the defining choice, I realized that the compasses had not stopped spinning. Miss Carroll sucks, Lenny said. Not until that moment did the compasses find true north, and I looked at Miss Carroll from across the room. Yeah. I was a stick puller. When I went home that day, I left my workbook in my desk. I passed my mother in the kitchen, and I didn't say a word. I didn't tell her I didn't get in trouble today. My pride had been struck in its weak point, and though I had treasured it so, I had been freed from its weight. My inventory was a workbook lighter from then on, and I would finish my workbook page with Lenny the next morning. My grades somewhat suffered, but I felt a new source of joy. I had a taste of defiance, of mischief. And a few weeks later, I came in 5 minutes late from recess. Sue me, Miss Carroll, I whispered. Lenny laughed. So whose fault was it? Who was to blame for this chaotic shift? Perhaps it was Lenny, who had offered me temptations toward a life of chaos and crime, and I became more like him by the end. Perhaps it was Miss Carroll, whose well of sympathy had run dry by the time I approached her desk that morning. Perhaps it was my own fault, for having built myself a castle of cards to sit upon, only for the inevitable wind to remind me. I'm inclined to say the latter of those, but you're allowed to interpret the story however you wish as well. There is no right answer. That's the magical thing about stories. In the act of receiving and interpreting it, you get to complete it yourself. You are the last piece of my puzzle. Thank you for completing it. After finishing my 5th Gypseros and getting a bit better with the bow, I returned to the Bounty Cat to receive my bounty treasures. Yum yum. Thank you, Bounty Cat, how kind. Thank you for spending your time listening to another of my stories. If you have any similar stories of your own to share about your life, choices in alignment, the world's compasses spinning, or something embarrassing happening on the main stage of the entire universe, I'd love to hear about them. Until next time, thank you for watching. Good luck, fellow hunters, and goodbye.